cactus on its own intends no harm. It's only when we interfere that it becomes dangerous.
Hello, welcome to my super secret channel, Mind for Story. Today I want to talk about tribalism in Chapter 8 of The Good Place. Reminders, I spoil everything from all over this entire show. Please don't watch my content unless you have already watched The Good Place through to the end. I really don't want to ruin this story for you. Tribalism, in this instance, I'm not speaking about indigenous tribes and their rights. I mean, I would, but I didn't really see any openings for it in this episode of television. If you did, please point it out so that I can see it for myself. I'm actually, in this video, I'm referring to more of tribalism as sort of a way of thinking or being that involves having a strong identity related to a group that you belong to, and possibly excessive levels of loyalty towards. I'm really looking at this idea of insider and outsider, who belongs, who doesn't, and who is good and who is bad when it comes to this episode.
Did you ever commit a serious crime, such as murder, sexual harassment, arson, or otherwise?
No.
Who belongs in the bad place? As per this moment, so this is a long list of things that if a person has done them, they might belong in the bad place. Eleanor says no to everything in this questionnaire.
Did you ever take off your shoes and socks on a commercial airline?
And socks? Ew, who would do that?
But it still doesn't mean that she isn't bad. This is just sort of a non-comprehensive list of things that could indicate that you are a vulgarian, and I just learned this word. It means a vulgar person, especially a rich person with coarse or ostentatious manners or tastes.
Did you ever have a vanity license plate, like Mama's BMW, Lexus for Liz, or Boob Guy?
No.
Or that you lack traits like consideration for others.
Did you ever reheat fish in an office microwave?
Ew, no.
Or maybe that you are bankrolling people who have done bad things. Maybe not bankrolling, but you're giving them money.
Have you ever paid money to hear music performed by California funk rock band the Red Hot Chili Peppers?
No.
Eleanor passes this first questionnaire. She hasn't done any of these, I guess, what we would call usual bad things, items that are so frequent they're on the list. Her case requires something more like open-ended questions, something more interview style.
Let's hear about the t-shirts, please.
And Eleanor then tells Michael about the dress bitch t-shirts, the whole story, which, so normally I don't summarize. I'm going to real quick summarize this story.
It doesn't make me look great, so don't judge me.
That's literally the purpose of this entire exercise.
She asked her friend/roommate to borrow a dress. The friend told her no. Then Eleanor tried it on anyways and ripped the back. When her friend later finds that the dress has this rip, she blames the dry cleaners. Eleanor does not step in and tell her that it was her. This turns into her friend having a big lawsuit against the dry cleaners, and I think they have to go out of business. And people online start calling her dress bitch. And then Eleanor and another of their friend decide to make and sell dress bitch t-shirts. Capping it off, Eleanor uses her money to buy the same exact dress for herself. And after telling this story, Eleanor is asked if she thinks she belongs in the good place.
No, I don't.
And again, all of this was about determining if Eleanor belonged. Everything about this is, I'm focusing on tribalism. Does Eleanor belong with the good people in the good place?
There should be a medium place for people like me who kinda sucked, but in like a fun, chill way.
I agree.
While she agrees that she doesn't belong in the good place, she also doesn't think that she belongs in the bad place.
Don't sweat it, champ. She's definitely one of ours.
Try and imagine being in Eleanor's position here, trying to be Eleanor. And I'm alarmed at how quickly this is going and offended that this guy is so quick and certain to determine that I am one of theirs. Physically, I can feel panic setting in. Like, it's the fluttery feeling inside my stomach and bile in the throat. Why the hell did I ever confess? Like, that was stupid. I can feel my fight or flight wanting to kick in, practically vibrating inside with adrenaline. which is completely gushing through my body because of the prospect of what's coming. I don't belong in the bad place. I really don't.
So we'll just roll on out, and you can get back to putting rainbows up your butt, or whatever you do here.
And still as Eleanor, I'm thinking that is something I might have said during my life on Earth. And man, I might belong in the bad place. This sort of ignorant kind of comment about another group, it is designed to repulse everyone who is not of the person who says it's group. It's one of the least cute parts of the sort of tribalism mindset. The part where you decide to put down somebody of the opposing group by saying things like this that you probably don't even suspect to be true.
For decency's sake, let her have some goodbyes.
Ugh. God, good people are the worst. Okay, 30 minutes. We got to get back for The Bachelor.
The Bachelor is an important show to the demons in the bad place. But yes, this moment is highlighting a divide. One group values decency, giving Eleanor a chance to say goodbye to people, and the other side values, I guess, being back in time to watch the rose ceremony. I have a vague idea of what the rose ceremony is. And of course the line, good people are the worst. That's a common phrase. If you fill in the blank with the group you put in the spot of good people, so blank is the worst, you can probably identify what tribe or group you consider yourself loyal to based on, whatever opposition you identified in that line. I'd like to back up and take a closer look at Tahani in this chapter, because she's showing a lot of sort of insider-outsider kind of thinking throughout.
I mean, you thought your soulmate was a good person, and then you learned that she's just an immoral grifter.
It's been revealed that Eleanor isn't supposed to be in the good place. And Tahani, she's quick to list off all the reasons that Eleanor doesn't belong.
She lied to everyone. She caused a giant sinkhole into which poor Glenn fell. She caused a trash storm. She pretended to be my friend.
There's definitely some anger there from Tahani. She starts saying these things to Chidi,
Lest we forget, she murdered Janet.
not realizing that he's been sort of part of a sub-group with Eleanor. He has known about Eleanor not belonging. He further knows that her own, Tahani's supposed soulmate, Jianyu, is actually Jason, who also does not belong. So, right now, Chidi is hearing a lot of thoughts that he knows would apply to himself at some level as well when Tahani starts going on and on about what she thinks of Eleanor in this moment.
As far as I'm concerned, the sooner she's gone, the better off we'll all be.
But yeah, so I guess what I'm thinking right now is when you loudly condemn a group or a person, or even just something like a behavior or a belief, etc., more people than just the intended audience can hear you. And when you call out a group that to you is almost abstract, or it's, an anonymous set of people you don't know, and you make it clear what you think of them, you're telling everyone that you presume to share your views that you will feel the same way about them if it comes up that they in any way resemble, the group or person that you were just talking about in this way. So that's a really uncomfortable realization for Chidi, and it's going to be probably uncomfortable for Tahani when she realizes that she said all this and Chidi is part of the sort of fraud situation that's been going on. Something else that's interesting about what's going on here, Tahani actually has no idea how some of the smaller groups that she is and is not a part of here. She's one of 4 humans being tortured in this neighborhood. She doesn't know that. And she is, she's the only human of that set who is not part of this sort of same subterfuge situation now.
Imposter who soiled our paradise with her moral turpitude.
And Tahani can't refrain from saying something pointed to Eleanor just in passing. And what does this add to the situation when she says this? All it does is reinforce, her own feelings toward the behaviors and outcomes of Eleanor's. It does nothing in the moment other than make, her feelings on these issues loud to everyone else. This moment is all about Tahani conveying where her loyalties and allegiances lie, with the good people who earned their spot in the good place, not with Eleanor, which is something I'd like to address. Being part of a group one considers superior is not in and of itself a virtue. Tahani believes she earned her spot in the good place, and she's being judgmental, she's being exclusionary, and she's making unkind comments to and about Eleanor. Does someone else's fault make it okay to go and, conduct yourself in this way? Or if the point is that in order to get at them, you have to go into the mud yourself, you have to behave in these kinds of ways to get at them, you're still coming out of it just as dirty as they were.
So you think that I should send her to the bad place?
Well, I didn't say that.
When asked directly if Eleanor belongs in the good place, Tahani really doesn't want to outright say that she thinks Eleanor should be sent to the bad place.
Is her staying here unfair to those who earned their place?
Like, she clearly doesn't want Eleanor in the good place.
Well, is it not she who wants us to leave her?
But, I don't know, I have to completely guess at this, but I think the idea that, for Tahani, the idea that Eleanor should be a part of the same group as her, that's the thing that's sort of bothering her. But Tahani wants somebody in a position of authority to say it. She likes the badge of honor of you are a good person, and then, looking at Eleanor and everything that has happened because of Eleanor, that authority to then say Eleanor is not a good person, you are not the same, and then remove Eleanor from the group. But she also, I don't think Tahani is comfortable with condemning Eleanor as harshly as saying she deserves to be tortured. Honestly, I'd like to acknowledge Tahani in this episode. She had a real and honest response to the situation, and we are seeing some biases and the like from her. And it's a view of her that is less generous. But we're seeing sort of getting the sense of her sort of defining the edges of what she thinks another person deserves. Because she's mad at Eleanor, but she doesn't necessarily think that means that Eleanor deserves to be tortured for all of eternity. And I really want to think about and acknowledge, people who similarly find themselves rethinking or questioning or doubting their own, first thoughts, opinions, beliefs about those who you consider from an opposing group. Because I know that can be challenging, especially if you're surrounded by people who have that same first thought, opinion, or belief. But my hope for you, if you're questioning, is getting the space to rethink. And the opportunity to gain a variety of perspectives from a variety of sources, and that those are helpful to you as you continue to navigate your life. That's my hope for Tahani, and that's my hope for all of you who are in that rethinking sort of spot. I'd also like to take a closer look at Chidi. Chidi's brand of tribalism is more inclusive. I don't even think I want to call it tribalism, but Chidi's brand of group involvement is more inclusive, and it's more based on sort of shared situation rather than ideas of superiority, in-group, out-group type of ideas.
Sure, just like the Allspark from Transformers, and you'll know instantly if you're lying about anything, so only smiles and nods. Got it?
So this is when Chidi and Eleanor are explaining to Jason that Michael has a lie detector in his office, and that essentially they just don't want Jason to talk when he's in there. And the whole lie detector thing, it sort of makes me think of, the first thing that came to mind was Lying Cat from Saga, the comic. If you haven't read any of it, I would highly recommend it. And while I haven't watched much of the show at all, it also sort of made me think, based, I guess, on sort of the trailer for it, the TV show Poker Face, that I think the main character can tell when people are lying, if I'm remembering correctly. There's also a movie called Dakota Sky. It's another young woman who can tell when people are lying. And what sort of struck me about several of these was these characters like to sort of act like they were disgusted that people lie, but a good part of the time it seemed as though they were equally or more disgusted just by the truth. I'm also thinking of Veritaserum from the Harry Potter stories, or the Lasso of Truth from Wonder Woman, and I'm thinking of the scenes that I can recall where I saw these items being used on people, and I always went, well, why aren't they just refusing to open their mouths and, just refusing to speak? But I think those items actually compel the truth out of you. So not speaking wouldn't really be an option if I'm correct, which it's kind of really invasive that those things operate in that way. Like, I know I'm wandering way off topic, but since I'm already there, I'm also thinking of how damning it is just to be interrogated for anything, usually for the situation that led to needing to be interrogated, and it's whether or not you're guilty of anything. Like, I'm thinking of one incident, this was years ago, but I saw two coworkers who got into an altercation with each other. They were having a fight. It was mostly a verbal fight at first, and it was a man and a woman, and the man was yelling, but it was the woman who was really getting physical. She was like trying to hit him and stuff, and the only physical part for him was that he was trying to get her to keep her hands off him, and so I was frozen in the doorway watching all this, and other coworkers rushed in to break them apart. But because I saw it from close to the start, I told the manager what had happened, what I'd seen. But none of that was, made public. And after that, everyone in that workplace treated the guy really badly. They all pretty much they saw him as someone who hits women, even though he didn't actually engage physically other than to try and defend himself, try to, block her hands and the like. And yeah, it just makes me aware that sometimes it doesn't even matter what you did or didn't do. Just the situation having happened and that you were in any way a part of it, it ends up being enough for too many people to decide that you no longer deserve the benefit of the doubt or respect or kindness or any other number of things. So I guess I'm feeling called to ask more questions in the future. Like, I'm going to ask the dumb questions or the questions that seem unnecessary because it seems obvious. But yeah, I'm aware that we know less than we think we do in a lot of these situations. So I'm going to try and remember to let myself ask the dumb, unnecessary, obvious questions in the future. To get back on topic, Chidi, he views Jason as being part of his group because they are all sharing a set of secrets, Chidi, Eleanor, and Jason. And what will benefit this small group, this little trio, the most is if Jason does not talk in Michael's office. Over the time, Chidi has gotten to know Jason and Eleanor as their teacher, and he knows how to communicate with Jason so that he understands. When, during this conversation, Chidi isn't trying to assert his individuality or express himself. He's focused on being understood. So when Jason refers to it as the Allspark from Transformers, Chidi agrees with him so that he doesn't, get in his own way toward this goal of keeping Jason quiet.
There is no award for most improved player, Chidi.
Well, maybe there should be.
Chidi, later, he comes and he confesses to, the murder of Janet. And then he proceeds to advocate that they let her stay in the good place because she's shown herself to be good at learning to be good. She is assimilating. Now, as far as things to assimilate into, being good is a nice one. But so the whole concept of assimilation can be, we'll go with controversial. It's a bigger deal than I necessarily would be able to comment to. Like, there are forms of assimilation that, in every kind of group that you have to decide how much you're going to participate in. But there have been forced and coercive forms of assimilation throughout history that have been very harmful. And I don't want to muddy the waters by making the idea of assimilation seem like a great idea. But in this case, what Chidi is really saying is that Eleanor is trying to be good, and she has become better than she was on Earth, which is, the thing they've been looking at. They've been looking at her life on Earth to determine her worth. And Chidi is arguing that she has improved. This is his big swing on her behalf. So he is putting another person's well-being ahead of his own. So this is loyalty. This is like a positive sense of connection. I've been up in my head about tribalism, so I'm gonna go ahead and differentiate right now. Tribalism, I have problems with. Loyalty, I don't. Being, in a group with people, I don't have an issue with that. Sorry, I'm all over the place today. Michael finds Chidi's, arguments in defense of Eleanor compelling enough that he does go and he stops the train and he has Eleanor come off of it. And he declares that this situation is completely new and it deserves more thought before they simply send Eleanor away to the bad place.
But until this is resolved, we're keeping the other Eleanor.
Fine. What? I'm sorry.
My question here, Trevor's response, then we're keeping the other Eleanor. He never mentioned another Eleanor before this moment. So why doesn't anybody call him out for that? And I feel like this, so again, I've decided I'm going to ask the seemingly obvious questions now. And some of the seemingly obvious answers, because he's a demon from a bad place, so he wouldn't just give over the person who's not supposed to be with them. Like, he's clearly only bringing it up because he wants to make the situation harder for them, but he had no intention of leaving behind the actual, supposed good Eleanor. If I go further, I think mostly they're in shock. I think Michael and the humans are in shock that there is another Eleanor. And they don't want to waste time. They want, if there is another Eleanor, to go ahead and remove her from being held by the demons as soon as possible rather than waste time talking about it. And it sort of alters the meaning of everything they've been doing and the choices they've been making. Because if there was this other Eleanor all along in the bad place, in their Eleanor's position, the place she's supposed to be, well then Chidi helping Eleanor was keeping the other Eleanor in a torture situation she doesn't deserve. And Michael coming and saying that Eleanor deserves something different, then the good Eleanor doesn't deserve to be considered. Now, they're not arguing this. They had no idea. This is a case of unintended consequences because of limited information. But I think these are thoughts that will come later, maybe. I really think it's shock. I think nobody asks Trevor why this is the first time he's mentioning other Eleanor. They were not expecting it.
Hi, everyone. I'm Eleanor Shellstrop.
And this is such an understated introduction, and at such a high-stakes moment. Throughout this story, throughout the show, throughout season 2, there's a lot of rebooted torture sequences. And these characters get introduced and reintroduced more than 800 times, and again on Earth. And for Chidi, again, when he gets his memory taken away so that he can be the 4th test subject in, I think, season 4. And every time an introduction or a greeting between 2 or more people happens, I'm seeing it, like right now as I'm thinking about it, I'm seeing it as a recognition that we are now experiencing overlap or a crossing in our lives. And we are occupying somebody else's life as well as our own in this moment. And it's interesting, I think, to think about it, because in these moments, we have the power to alter this person's mood, to change their life or change their mind, make them happy, sad, mad, any number of things. But we have powers in these moments to impact people beyond ourselves. I haven't really thought about crossing paths in that way before, but it's true. You have, now granted, they have the same abilities and power over you, but when this Eleanor shows up, it changes everything for Eleanor, for Michael, for Chidi, and probably if Jason were the thoughtful type, it would probably change things for Jason. He'd have to wonder if there is an actual Jianyu who's in his place in the bad place. Yeah, this is an absolute shock to the system, this introduction of this other Eleanor. What are my takeaways? Well, so I struggled a lot with this one, and I kept getting off topic of tribalism. Honestly, because I got to a point where my brain was like enmeshing the very idea of community or group with the idea of tribalism. So I'm going to sort of divide them right now up front. I had to take a walk so that my brain could operate appropriately to do this. But tribalism, as my understanding, is, like I said up at toward the beginning of the video, it's a mindset or a way of thinking that it's about prioritizing your loyalty to a group. So in and of itself, tribalism isn't necessarily bad, but it is not the same exact thing as being part of a community or being part of a group. Not even being a cooperative group. But yeah, so I struggled with this video because my brain was sort of mishmashing them all into one thing. Communities and groups are just, gatherings of people. Tribalism is a way of thinking, and it's a way of thinking that can cause problems. And large groups of people that engage in tribalism together can be dangerous, not just, to outsiders, but amongst themselves. They can cause problems for each other. I wanted to take a minute to acknowledge that this video was hard for me, because that sort of mental collapsing of two different things was happening while I was trying to put it all together. So if I take a step back, tribalism, my takeaways about tribalism, I see it most in terms of survival and status seeking. People turn to tribalism as a means to survive by being part of a strong group. Sometimes that's appropriate. Sometimes it is. I hope I wasn't too horribly confusing to follow today. I know I confused myself, so maybe I'm just asking you to be a lot smarter than me. I already assume you are. I always try to assume that everyone around me is smarter than me until and unless I see reason to not think that anymore. But I'm sorry if I completely lost you. And I didn't talk too much directly about tribalism, again, because it sort of was collapsing on the whole idea of groups as a whole. But please do, if you have some insight that pertaining to tribalism that you could offer, please do. I would love to hear your take, and I hope you have a lovely day.
Suppose some part of me possibly has a sense of casual kinship with you, much as one might be fond of a street cat.